I'm sure my blood pressure's lower. I'm sure my cortisol pressures are lower. And I literally get home and I feel like I was riding with somebody else.
Welcome to Tesla Boomers, a podcast where we take you through all the latest technologies from Tesla that will help you retire happier, healthier, and safer. I'm your host, Chris Derry. Today I have the pleasure to interview Bill Brackbill, a financial services veteran that I engaged a couple weeks ago at the Chattanooga Charge, a meetup that attracted Tesla owners from all over the South. So, Bill, where were you raised?
Well, I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where the Brackbills actually have a page in the phone book, so I didn't feel out of place up there. The ancestors were Mennonites. Um, had a land grant from William Penn back in the 1700s, and then in the late 60s, my parents moved to Florida, where my mom was from, and so I guess from the age of 8 years on, uh, grew up in Pensacola, Florida.
What kind of childhood did you have?
It was pretty uneventful. Um, went to public schools. Um, we lived out in the country, so did a lot of bicycle riding, swimming, and you know, didn't have to go to summer camp. I pretty much lived in a summer camp because out in the country, um, I would. You know, I had two parents and you know, intact family, two two younger sisters.
And what was your dad a farmer?
No, he had his degree in accounting, but he worked as a production manager for a chemical company, first Monsanto, and then another company in Mobile, Alabama, later on.
And so, what did you excel at when you were in high school?
The I was the first year that our school had soccer as a letter sport. I played on the soccer team the 10th and 11th grade, and we actually had to bring an outside coach in because nobody had heard of soccer in the 70s. Um, and then I wouldn't say that I excelled in school. I pretty much dropped out and got my GED um, in 1979 when my class graduated.
What was your first memory of hearing about Tesla? And did you think it was legit or some, some sci-fi hype?
Just like everybody else, Elon Musk had built a roadster, and it was electric car, and then it was kind of eccentric, and you know, I never really took it serious till a guy that used to work for me bought a Model Y, and I'm like, if that dude can get one, I'm getting one, and that was in 2021, and I wasn't an investor or anything, and so I ordered the new long range Model Y, paid the $10,000 for the FSD that didn't really do anything back then. And and then once I started driving it, I was like, this really is going to change the world. And I started following all the YouTubes and the podcasts, and then when Elon bought X, I got involved in that and started getting more engaged with the community, the Tesla community, and started picking up shares. And I've got about 2,030 shares right now, uh, which were worth twice as much back in January. Uh, but I'm not one of the all-in people. It's not. It could go to zero, and it's not part of my. It wouldn't affect my retirement strategy. I'm 64 now. I can't put everything in that one basket. Um, so But I truly believe it's going to be, the $2,500 a share stock. If not 5,000. Um, it what it will do is it'll impact the lives of my grandchildren. Because I'll probably never need to touch my retirement reserves anyways, um, since I don't think I'll ever retire.
Can I assume that some of the shares that you own are in some retirement account, some qualified account?
Yeah, I've got, I think 1,950 of them are in my retirement account, and 80 of them are in my Schwab account, which is outside the retirement.
This is not for everyone, but it seems to me that one of the best places to put Tesla shares is inside your IRA, and maybe even better, inside your Roth IRA, so that you never have to pay taxes on any money you pull out of it. And then it just grows to however many $1,000 a share it will grow to.
Yeah, it would have been really good back in January to sell it, pay the taxes on it, and then put it in a Roth, you know, and start over again. But
Nobody rings the bell at the top, and nobody rings the bell at the bottom.
right, yeah, most of my, uh, I guess what you would say, or not most of it, but a lot of my capital is tied up in building houses and land development. So uh, I've often said that this one piece of property I just sold last year that I bought for 200,000 in 2005. If I would have spent 200,000 and bought Tesla shares, I would have been much better off.
Who knew how effective a CEO and a manager of capital Elon would turn out to be? Because, Elon's out there smoking weed on Joe Rogan's show, launching cars into space.
I didn't quite believe. I believe that was all fake about the car being launched into space. You know, I take Elon with a grain of salt. There's no way that car is out there in space.
I saw a reference to it, and he even talked to Joe Rogan about that, I think. So you're a boomer, right?
Yes, I just turned 64 a couple weeks ago. So yeah, and my wife is a boomer. She was born in 63, so she's about 3 years behind me. So we're the last.
So, how'd you go from muscle cars and gas stations to geeking out over electric torque and battery ranges?
Well, because of I live in Chattanooga, but I primarily work in Atlanta, which is a 2-hour drive, and then I do some work, and even further away, which is a 3.5-hour drive in Columbus, Georgia. So on any given day, I could put 2 to 500 miles on my car, and I'm spending $10,000 a year in gas and a lot of maintenance costs, oil, you know, wear and tear, and just what initially attracted me to the Tesla was that this thing is going to like drive itself, and which would allow me to be more of a passenger. So when I get home at night, I'm relaxed. Um, I can call, talk to my daughter, catch up with my wife, on a 2-hour drive, and so or listen to different things, podcasts or YouTubes, or just catch up on the news, um, and then not even have to worry about getting in an accident. And you know it's actually changed my spending habits too, because I don't stop at gas stations anymore, and that's where they sell lottery tickets. And not that I ever bought a lot, but sometimes when you see it get up to 5 or 600 million, you're thinking, well, it could be me. Uh, but it never was. And then you stop at a gas station. Oh, you run in and get a, a little candy or a soda or something. So now, because I don't stop at gas stations, I feel like I can't spend more per day eating than I do on my energy, which is like $10. Like $5 or $10 a day is what I spend on on electricity for the Cybertruck, and you can't pull through any drive-through or anywhere. And so it's actually lowered my spending because I don't want to spend more, you know, at Starbucks than I did on charging. So one thing I did is I put chargers at all my job sites. So like right now where I'm sitting on a job site, I'm plugged into a 220 outlet charging as we speak, um, at about 10 cents a kilowatt hour versus 30 cents a kilowatt hour at a supercharger.
Got it. So you really see your Cybertruck impacting the rest of your life. And what would you think would be the best benefits that it's gonna supply to you?
Well, I switch back and forth between the Model Y and the Cybertruck just so that I don't wear out the Cybertruck. Like if I know I'm going to need to put some stuff in the back of my truck and carry some stuff around or pick up stuff at Lowe's or something, I'll make sure I take the Cybertruck that day. Um, but just in general, whether it's the Model Y or the Cybertruck, it impacts my life in that, like, I don't forget to get off at exits anymore. Like if you're talking on the phone and you're driving down and you're like, oh wow, I missed my exit. It just all of a sudden you'll be talking and all of a sudden it'll just shift over into the right lane and get in the exit. And you're like, oh, I'm here at my exit. And and that happens to me a lot. Uh, and like with the FSD also, like you're not going to run out of gas. Sometimes I would run out of gas before, and now if you've got your destination programmed in, and you don't have enough to get home, it routes you to a charger. You don't even think about it. It just says you need to charge, and you know, then you're on the way to a charger.
So one thing that you mentioned that I want you to elaborate on, and that is the amount of energy that you don't have to spend driving, that you can spend in other ways and feel great when you arrive at your destination.
You don't realize the tension that's involved. It's like, driving in Atlanta and then I-75 between Atlanta and Chattanooga. It's a lot of semi trucks and it's 6 lanes both, all the way or 10 lanes. And I mean, you are probably, if you had some way to measure your cortisol levels in real time for blood or, your blood pressure, I'm sure my blood pressure is lower. I'm sure my cortisol pressures are lower. And, and I literally get home and I feel like I was riding with somebody else. Uh, several summers ago, and he's my son-in-law now. I hired my daughter's boyfriend to just drive me back and forth between Chattanooga and Atlanta as kind of an internship job, and it was great for me. Like I'd sleep or work on my computer, and this is the next best thing. And I'm starting to respect the autonomy in the cabin monitoring where I'm actually a much safer driver now because you really can't use your phone. Um, and I combine that, and I also have the Allstate app, which records and gives you get discounts on your Allstate insurance if you're not using your phone while you're driving. And the interface, with the Tesla and the Bluetooth on your phone, you can pretty much, do voice calls, say, hey, call somebody, text somebody. You can read texts that come in on your screen, and I just program in a couple of stops on my way, like where I can check emails and or respond to texts or that 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 sometimes I need to do that. Um, so I feel like one of the biggest risk factors of my life would be dying in a car accident with driving 40,000 miles a year, and I feel like Tesla's almost taken that risk away. Um, you know, People are driving. The guy tried to kill his family, and he drove a Model Y off a cliff, and he couldn't even kill him then. Yeah, out in California, the doctor, I think, and his wife, they were getting divorced, and you know, he drove off a cliff, saying, "Well, I'm going to kill the whole family," and you know, they were all injured, but nobody was severely injured.
So, Bill, one of the things you just mentioned, I think is really interesting. And that is initially you said that you might not retire because you enjoy doing what you're doing. And a baby boomer who loved working, loved engaging, could even become more productive if he drove a Cybertruck and used FSD, right?
Yeah, I mean, in construction, yes, a Cybertruck, but just any Tesla with FSD, because with the hardware 4, it's just so smooth. My son-in-law is a realtor. He'll program in 4 or 5 different addresses for showings, and then he's going right from one to the other, boom, 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 and his on his Tesla, and he's not having to do it. I mean, he's 25 years old, but he traded in his uh, Hyundai hybrid, got a $7,500 tax credit, and got the 1.9% financing, and made it, with not having to buy gas and no maintenance. It is the lowest cost operation. So I see a lot of people, the kids that aren't like anti Elon, anti Tesla. I don't know how long that's going to take to blow over, but you know, when you get young kids, my daughter drives one, my other son-in-law drives one, and it's all because I bought one. I encouraged them to get one, um, and now the used market. My neighbor, he just bought a Model S, swore he'd never buy a Tesla. Now he bought a Model S. Him and his wife were fighting over it. They had to just buy another Model S. They were buying used ones, so they weren't too bad a price, and got rid of one of their Lexuses. So they kept one Lexus, because they just feel like they need to have one. But and then it's like everybody, like, once you know somebody that has one, and just like the first one I bought was because somebody I knew bought one, and then now we can have a family reunion and have like 6 or 7 Teslas there.
And you're going to be able to do a light show one of these days, right?
Yeah, the yeah, usually they all got to go to bed early with the grandkids, so we'll try one day. So
You know, Chattanooga's got that southern vibe.
yeah, I wish.
How?
Now you were here. Have you been to
Mhm.
Chattanooga much before?
Oh, yes. Chattanooga used to be in my territory when I represented asset management firms.
Yeah, we'd love to go up to Lookout Mountain. I've got the senior national park, lifetime pass,
Mhm.
and we'll just run up to Point Park and just walk that, and just it's so beautiful up there at Lookout. And
So I've got one story for you. The only time I played golf up there was with a client, and we had two of his clients with us in a foursome. And I'm not much of a golfer, but I looked like I was a good golfer, had all the right things and had the right club and all that sort of thing. But this broker asked me to tee off on number one. So I said, sure. And as I swung through, I hit the turf and a big glop of mud hit my client right in the chest.
yeah,
And he looked down, looked back at me, and just shook his head.
that's about the way my dad golfs.
Well, I was always a client golfer, and never in high school. You said you were on the first soccer team. I was on the first wrestling team. Yeah. And the guy who I should have wrestled at about 175 or 180, and the guy that was there was our fullback, and he could beat me, and I couldn't beat him. So I had to wrestle heavyweight. No fun, but it was a great experience. So, so let me switch the topic a little bit, Bill. Tesla's got a cult following, and we saw it at the meetup. What's the one thing about the company or Elon that you're like, nah, I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid?
We were live and we watched live the the landing on the moon and all that stuff, and then 50 plus years later, we have not been back to the moon. Uh, there's been, talk of, well, they've since discovered there's a Van Allen belt and there's too much radiation, and so you know, I'm kind of in the school that maybe we didn't go to the moon, and you know, and there's a lot of technical challenges, which is you know maybe Elon can overcome those challenges. Yeah. Um, I listened to that guy talk at the Chattanooga Charge about how they're going to have to position all these fueling you know stations along the way to get to Mars, and um, I mean I understand the concept of interplanetary, like if something happens to Earth, humanity could be preserved um, on another planet. But when you really think about it, if something happens to Earth, it's probably going to impact our whole solar system. Like it could destroy life on, you know, if there was life on Mars, life there too. I mean, so you almost have to become interstellar life, and maybe that's the next step. But
Well, I think what's cool about his vision is that he makes all the components of his companies fit that vision, that integrate together. So that why why do we have full self-driving for a Tesla vehicle? Well, that's because the computer that well, so really a Tesla vehicle is just a robot on wheels.
the same computer learning inference software will work for the Optimus robot. Yeah, I'm all over that. As a boomer, I'm looking forward to having a full staff, one or two Optimists, and I'll have my own Downton Abbey at home. I'll have a butler and a cook and a chauffeur, all of it. So the
It can't come too soon.
and and there's I know a lot of people up here in Chattanooga. There's a lot of assisted care and nursing home businesses located here, in national companies located here in Chattanooga. So it's a big business, and it's a big cost, and it drains a lot of people's end of life resources, the nursing care. And if you could have an in-home Optimus robot at a cost of $50,000 to purchase it, but you could stay in your home, it could prepare your food, you get better medical monitoring, and you know you wouldn't completely take out the human element, but maybe just a human needs to come by like once a day, for 30 minutes. And so there's going to be a lot of changes in the retirement business. People are going to say, well, I have to get rid of this house. I can't take care of it. It's, there's too expensive to take care of it. But then, your optimist is cleaning the bathrooms and doing the clothes and that kind of stuff, or even providing security monitoring, to that degree. So
I'm looking forward to that, Bill. I've got 10 years on you. And so the Optimus robot in my house can't come too soon.
yeah, we had my mother-in-law, my son-in-law's grandmother lives alone. She's in her 90s. She's so healthy, and she went out in her backyard the night before last to shoo a squirrel out of her bird feeder. And I don't know if she got up on a step stool or whatever, but she fell and broke her hip in her backyard. Laid there all night long until the morning when somebody, I guess a neighbor, either came to check on her or maybe heard her like yelling for them. And now she's having emergency, hip replacement surgery today. And just the, ju- you know, she's obviously getting a life alert now. So they've been trying to make her get that. So just there's a lot of simpler technologies in having a robot that can help you. But that's one problem when people get older. They're too confident in their physical abilities.
I think that happens to all of us until something like that happens. And if you have an Optimus robot and you say to him, I want you to check on me, or when you see my blood pressure go up to this level, I want you to come and find me. So, yeah, I
Right.
think it makes our future
Or you can tell the Optimus robot to get that squirrel out of your bird food.
absolutely. So, let me ask you about driving. Have you ever floored your Cybertruck in ludicrous mode and just cackled like a madman?
I'll take people for test rides and I'll do it, and they cackle. Uh, I, I'm over it. I realize that every time I do that, I'm diminishing the life of the battery. So you know, I pretty much just get in it and put it on FSD and the power management system. It accelerates and decelerates and maximizes the battery. And you know, I'm not I didn't buy it for the performance, but I do know that, like, if I get pinched on an exit ramp, um, or entrance ramp, I can get past whatever I need to get in. There was one experience. I've had actually two experiences that were, I don't know how they would have turned out if I wasn't in a Tesla. All of a sudden, I was in the left lane and a semi just started moving over into my lane. I guess he didn't see me. And I mean, my only option was to get into the emergency lane. It's kind of like not really a lane, and floor it to get back around him. Well, then as I was doing that, there was like how like semis will lose tire retreads, so there was some debris laying in that emergency lane, and so that my gap was really closing for me to be able to pass him and get back in front of him without, I don't know what it would have done to me if I would hit that, but just that was just zoom. And then there was another case where I was in the Peach Pass.
Now, did you do that or did FSD take an action?
Well, it moved me out of the lane. But as the truck started coming over on me, it moved me to the left to keep me from getting hit. But I disengaged at that point because I don't think the truck would have, I mean, it would have just maybe even stopped, or it would have just hit the debris in the road. Um, I took over at that point. But um, the second time was I was in a Peach Pass, like, toll lane. We're all going like 80 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, the car, two or three cars up, the traffic must have stopped, but I couldn't see it stopping. And at the last minute, the car in front of me stopped, and the I think I was in the Model Y, and it went into, what is it called? Emergency. It's like, even if you don't have FSD, the car will still stop to avoid an accident. And there's no way I could have reacted to get my foot onto the brake fast enough. The and it literally stopped. And I'm looking in the rearview mirror, just thinking somebody's going to slam into my rear end. But you know, the that's one of the technologies that Tesla has, that the National Safety Transportation Board is looking at requiring all automakers to have, um, because it's sort of like anti-lock brakes or seat belts. It's so essential.
So, in many ways, the the Tesla technology is making driving a lot more safer, and that's going to be really more and more important to you as you age.
Yeah, I will admit that I will drive when I'm tired now. You know, like, used to, if you're driving and you're getting a little tired and you're thinking, "Oh gosh, if I fall asleep, I'm going to die." I'll just veer off the road. Uh, and then, of course, if you're riding with your wife, and she's not going to be able to. take a nap because she's worried about you taking a nap. So you got two people sitting there stressed out. So now with FSD and the cabin monitoring, it sees that your eyes are getting heavy. Even before you fall asleep, it sees that your blinking slows down, and then it starts giving you these warnings to pay attention. And then if you actually do have that long blink, you get that red dawn of death. Your whole screen turns red and I mean, but yet it's keeping you in your lane. It's not going to let anything happen. And so that's happened to me twice where I actually did fall asleep and the car woke me up. I'm also you asked me about, skepticism with Tesla and Elon. I do believe that they're going to have a robo-taxi and that it's going to be unsupervised, but I believe it's going to be highly geofenced, which means that it's going to be point to point proven routes. You can only be picked up and dropped off at certain points. Um, and because one of the biggest problems is all the old technology vehicles and the human drivers. If everybody was in an autonomous Tesla and all cars were acting rationally and obeying the speed laws, then I think it works. But when you throw these out there, um, I just don't think that I think it's going to be a while till we have full autonomy. Just like FSD works better in San Francisco or Silicon Valley than it does in Chattanooga because there's more people and more data.
It would make sense for Elon because he is so focused on safety. It would make sense for him to do this in stages. And one of the things they've talked about, because he's got all the cameras operating, is to have a, a, a group of people that are watching through the cameras, just like Waymo does it to start. And I could see that happening.
Yeah, well, they're going to have that in, like drone pilots. And, whether one guy is monitoring four cars or whatever.
Well, the technology has to improve. And that's one thing that he's focusing on. I think one day we'll have autonomous.
Well, for somebody that's been driving it since 2021, and then I got hardware 3 on my Model Y, I've got hardware 4 on my Cybertruck. The difference in those two is like margarine versus butter. Uh, it's definitely, and so I mean, and the robo taxi is supposed to be operating on hardware 5. There's and so and then what is the Cortex computer, and they're just bringing all this data in, and uh, we just the AI is just 5xing, 10xing, and so just what I've seen in 4 years advancement in the FSD, um, is probably going to happen in the next year, and then um, and they're talking about giving the Model 3 owners that paid full price, or the Hardware 3 owners that paid full price for their FSD, a free upgrade. But I would probably take a free FSD transfer option and to get a newer Tesla.
So, Bill, if you could sit down with Elon over a beer or whatever he's drinking these days, what's the one question you'd ask him about Tesla that keeps you up at night?
I got more things in life that keep me up at night, or that I I think Tesla's moving so fast. It's really not a matter of what keeps me up at night. It's you know I guess because I feel like I'm plugged in with the community and everybody's like all trying to get inside his head. I kind of feel like I kind of already there's nothing he could tell me that I haven't already heard.
Have you read his biography by Isaacson?
Yeah, no.
Well, that really
I
helped
feel
me.
like I got all the AI high points out of it. You know,
Well, reading that book really helped me understand the bigger picture about where he's come from, why he's doing what he's doing, a relationship with his dad and his kids, not his well, his kids also. It just gave me a better perspective for trying to understand him.
yeah, he's definitely. I mean, I was telling my daughter, I said, you really need to start treating your kids worse if you want them to be successful. Yeah. It seems like it's always the kids that had like some kind of troubled life that that do good.
That could be another hour-long conversation I'd love to have with you.
At least make kids join the military or something. Some kind of national service.
To present some turmoil, some chaos in their lives, and then they've got to figure out how to combat it. So, Bill, I want to thank you for riding along with us today on Tesla Boomers. Now, for more tips on Tesla's life enhancing technology, follow us here for new episodes each week. Bill Brackbill, thanks very much for being here today. If viewers want to get in touch with you, where can they connect with you best online?
Uh, well, I don't really. My business is kind of. We're working on a website, but on X, I'm at William Brackbill, the cyber ambassador, um, which I kind of switched to that name after I bought the Cybertruck and was getting swamped at all the supercharger places with people driving up with their kids and wanting to see the truck and climb all over it. You know, and that doesn't happen as much now, but back last summer, it was pretty much a novelty.
Mhm. Well, if you don't want to miss my future podcasts, make sure you give us a like below and subscribe. And remember, get out there and test drive a Tesla and don't let the old man in.